On behalf of everyone at CROW LAX, we would like to extend our sincerest condolences to Owen George of the Rocky View Silvertips, who passed away last week in a motocross accident. Gone far too soon, Owen's family and the Silvertip organization is in our thoughts and prayers. Rest easy, Owen. As teams remain struggling to emerge as contenders, the murky middle continues to dominate the scene. And it was a week of the improbable comeback. We delve into all the latest talking points right now on the Junior Beast Pod on CROW LAX TV.
Welcome back to the Junior Beast Podcast, where we talk everything RMLL Junior B Tier 1 every single week. My name is Keenan, as always, joined by my co-host, Mohammed. And historic weekend on CROW, the most broadcasts we've ever had in a single weekend across all four divisions that we broadcast: Junior B Tier 1, Tier 2, Senior B, Alberta Major Female. And going into another historic weekend next weekend with another game added on top of that, 11 broadcasts total over the week. So, nothing short of action-packed, I should say.
Yeah, and why don't we start it off on Friday night, where the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels would pay a visit to Bill Hunter to take on the Edmonton Warriors. And Keenan, this was an ugly game. There's really not much else I have to say here other than there were a bunch of turnovers that led directly to scoring chances. Both teams had a lot of looks and easy looks in transition. The Rebels come away 8-5 victors, so they do enough to get the win. I thought Bajma looked good for them. He was all over the floor, pressing up and creating havoc. And then also I thought Joe Levette for the Rebels had a good game. They moved him onto the crease on the power play midway through that game, and I thought that was a smart move. He's a guy that'll go grab loose balls in the corners and create some offense that way. Will also cut across the net and get some inside looks. So I thought he looked good. He's a guy that's not going to get a lot of pub or a lot of attention, but he did have a good one on Friday night inside Bill Hunter Arena. But yeah, the Rebels, like I said, did enough to win this game. I know they weren't happy with the game. I don't know how they could be, but they get the win 8-5, and they improved their first-place record in the North.
Yeah, I wasn't able to catch a whole lot of this game, but yeah, it just seems like it was, kind of like that for the whole game, just looking even at the box score. It's rare that you see the Rebels score less than 10, I think. I'm very used at least to the Rebels, scoring those double digits. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. Later we'll talk about the other game that they played this week, where they didn't score double digits again. But yeah, no, I think I'm impressed with Jolivet. He's a guy that we don't really talk about a whole lot, but it's good to see him finding some success now, moving into that power play slot. So I mean, kudos to him for taking full advantage of it.
Yeah, no, so the Rebels do improve their record there, albeit in not so pretty fashion. And also on Friday night, the CROW and the Outlaws played a bit of a barn burner. There was a bunch of wild swings in the score in this game. You had 3-1 CROW to start, then 8-4 Outlaws. They go on a 7-1 run. And then the CROW come all the way back and win 13-10 on a Josh Fodchuk outside rip that would end up being the game-winning goal. Both of Elliott and Fodchuk pop off again for the CROW, and that's the way it's going to be or have to be for them to have success. Their top guys filling the net. And on the other side, Carter Grace goes for 4 goals for the Outlaws. So the CROW make up for their loss against the Outlaws just a week prior, also at home. That made this game even more important for them to get. And they do improve their record and still sit just like they're right neck and neck with the Outlaws right now for second in the division. But I think they have a couple more in the loss column, so I believe they're third at the moment. But I wanted to touch on just the Outlaws for a second. They take the loss here, but I think they're a team that's really maximizing what they have at their disposal. I think the coaching staff is doing a good job of getting everything they have out of their guys. I think they lack some depth, and it's a lot on the plate of the Porters and Grace and also Hildebrand. And a lot of those guys are younger and smaller bodied players. So as the year goes on, the wear and tear might get to them. But for now, they're really carrying the mail. And like I said, the Outlaws maximizing the talent they do have. And they've been competitive throughout. And they also played in a game this week that I can't wait to talk about, but that's for later. For now, the Crude with a big win at home in St. Albert on Friday night. Keenan, what do you got here?
Yeah, I think I'm impressed with the way that the Outlaws have been playing recently. Sure, they take the L here. I do think, however, though, that, new head coach this year for the Outlaws and Dean Casey, he's been able to find a way to, like you said, maximize the potential that these guys are playing at. And, I think that the Outlaws are, oh man, excuse moi, that they are getting to where I kind of expect they should be playing at on paper. And I'm glad to see that it's slowly working its way there. Again, I think we could have seen the Outlaws take the Crude out 2 weeks in a row, which I think would have been devastating for the Crude, quite honestly. But, kudos to the Crude for coming in, or I guess coming into their own barn and, defending it this time against the Outlaws, against an Outlaws team that seems to be running fairly hot as of late.
Yeah, and that's a domino game in the North as those two teams occupy second and third. Right now, it would be a round one matchup in a best of three to determine who would move on to play the Rebels if the season ended today. Now let's move over to Saturday, where the Mountaineers would begin a 3-game set in Regina against the Queen City Kings. And the Mountaineers came out and got down 5-0 early, and to their credit, they fought back. Graham Podrasky goes for 4 goals in the losing effort as they would eventually go down 11-8. So they narrow the gap fairly significantly throughout the game, just aren't able to quite get there. So right off the bus, maybe they were a bit flat, and that is probably. I mean, I didn't see this game, but I'm assuming that's a big reason why they went down the way they did early. But were able to rebound and get into this game and prove to be a formidable opponent for the Kings all weekend. I'll do all 3 of these games together here. All weekend, Lenz and McDonald went off. That is until the last game, where after a 17-10 win in the second game for the Kings in a high-scoring affair, on Sunday, the Mountaineers would actually get them 8-4, and McDonald and Lenz, get this, were held without a point combined. Neither of them got a single point in this game after terrorizing the Mountaineers in the previous 2. Kashner goes for 6 points, Asher Lukefeld, 3 goals, 1 assist, and Dane Hansen, 4 points, all for the Mountaineers. So in an 8-4 relatively low-scoring game, they had 3 guys pop off for a bunch of points. And I think the story of that game had to be the Mountaineers finally being able to slow down the Kings' offense, and they get a much-needed win on that road trip. That is tough. I know last year the Warriors went there. I think they lost all 3. The Rebels went there and got the last one after dropping the first 2, just off the top of my head. So that is a tough weekend to go in there and play those 3 games in roughly 24 hours. And the Mountaineers probably their biggest win of the year over the Kings there. What do you have to say, or anything you got here with Mountaineers Kings?
I think you covered it pretty well, personally. I don't have a whole lot extra to add. The one thing I will add, however, is that it's an interesting situation for the Kings. This season, they actually only have, 2 of these technical homestands, I would call them, against a team from from out in Alberta. And one of them was a set of 3 against the Rockies. That's where the 3 default wins are coming into play for the Kings. The series against the Mounties was the only other one where a team was coming out from out west here for a 3-game set over the course of 2 days. Now the Kings technically only have 2 more home games left, and they still have 9 road games to finish their year, all within the matter of June 20th through July 13th. So I'm interested to see how the Kings are going to do on the road for basically the rest of the season at this point. I think the Mounties did a phenomenal job going in there and at least pulling out a single win there, which, I mean, the Rebels went even further, last weekend before, and come home with nothing against the Blizzard. So, I mean, at least the Mounties are going out east and getting some points. So, kudos to them for finding a way to win at the Al Ricci.
Yeah, especially for a team with so many games against the Rockies that they're not even going to get to play. Getting a win against a legitimate, one of the better teams in the league right now, I think is going to go a long way. Because I said before, I think I said it last week before they went on that trip, that they were a team that I felt needed to find their identity and kind of figure out who they were. And a lot of the time, like for teams going on the road helps that. It helps guys come together and sort of have a bit of a seeing the light type moment. And I think that, getting a win there is huge for their morale more than anything else. Like going there and getting swept would have been pretty defeating. So I think that's a nice win for them, something that they could probably catapult off of and find some success here moving forward. Now, also traveling east into Saskatchewan were the Marauders, and they also dropped their first game of the 3-game set, 8-5 to the SWAT. But then they would go on and drub the SWAT in the second game, 16-6, and then edge them out in the third game, 8-7. These are 2 teams that for whatever reason, I rarely ever see. So there's not a whole lot that I'm going off of here. But, Ben Erickson does go off for a combined 9 goals over the weekend. So shout out to him. He had 2 games where he had 4 goals apiece in, actually. And it was also a big scoring weekend for Mason Luoma out of the SWAT. So the overall, the Marauders take the weekend series 2-1, and they actually gained 2 points on the Mountaineers in that race for home floor in what looks like an auto first round matchup, with the Shamrocks already really kind of pulling away in the division. And I've talked about it before, Okotoks is tougher to play in their barn. So I do think that matters somewhat, with those 2 teams battling for home floor in that first round. So the Marauders pick up 4 points out of a possible 6 on the weekend. Keenan, what's your breakdown here, Marauders and SWAT?
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised in a way that the SWAT even were able to pull out a win, as bad as that sounds. It's only the SWAT's second win of the season, I believe, if I'm not mistaken here. And they do it against a fairly strong Marauders team. So kudos to the SWAT on getting that win even in a tight 8-5 contest. And, even staying in that 8-7 loss. I think that it's going to be interesting. I agree. I think the Shamrocks are starting to show that they're going to land on the top of the table again in the South. So Marauders and Mounties, however, I think this year is going to shape up to be a very interesting first round, given that the Marauders and Mounties, I cannot English today, I swear. They only sit 2 points apart, and the Mounties have 2 games in hand down in third. So, it's going to be interesting going into, the back half of the season here, seeing how the Mounties and Marauders shape up, as I don't know if we see those 2 clubs actually face each other at any point for the rest of the season. I am actually incorrect. They do play each other one more time up to the end of the season. So, or two more times up to the end of the season. So I'm curious because those two games are going to be big swing games once it comes down to it.
Yeah, so repeat that again. What's the points in the game number of games played situation right now between those two teams?
Marauders currently sit second in the South with 14 points, 12 games played. Mounties are sitting third with 12 points and 10 games played. So 2 points back, 2 games in hand for the Mounties.
Right. Okay. So yeah, it's going to come down to the wire. And
Absolutely.
if either team can take both remaining games against the other, that's probably going to solidify their spot. So,
Well, June 12th is the next matchup between them at the Acadia. And then they play one more time. I'm just looking here to see if I can find that game. On July 4th in Okotoks. So each team plays against, or they have one home game each to see what happens there. So I'm curious because those could be the games that decide who gets the home floor advantage in round one.
right. And if I'm not mistaken, the Marauders won the first game, the first meeting between the two.
I believe you are correct. Yes, they did. That was a 10-8 final back on May 9th.
Right. Okay. So if they split the remaining two, the Marauders will win the season series, and they would have the tiebreak for anybody at home wondering um, how that would work out. So the Marauders with a little bit of an advantage there, but the Mountaineers also with 2 games in hand. So it's going to be a tight race in the South for that second spot and home floor in the first round. Also Saturday, and this might have been the game of the weekend, up there at least with the Mavericks and Outlaws. The Chill Five, the Rampage Five. Now, Keenan, this was 5-2 after one for Red Deer. So you do the math. There was 3 goals scored the rest of the game, and all 3 of those were scored by the Chill in the first 8.5 minutes of the second. So it was 5-5 with 11:30 to go in the second, and the both goalies combined to shut out the other team for the remaining 31:30 of game time. Boswell again scores a couple of goals while Bannister pops off for a goal and 3 assists in the 5-5 draw. These two teams know each other well, two Central Division rivals. And I was told that this game was back and forth. A lot of, it was pretty wide open. Both goalies standing on their head. A lot of good looks in transition for both teams. Fast-paced game. And if this is a preview of a round one matchup, uh, man, that's
Sign me
must
up.
watch. That's must watch TV right there.
Man, sign me up if this is the first round matchup because holy crap. You're talking about two goaltenders standing on their heads for over half of the game, man. Like, unbelievable. 5-2 after one, and then 3 goals by the Chill, and like you said, 3 goals by the Chill in that first half of the second. Um, just wow. I don't really know if I have really any words for this. It's just so impressive, the goaltending matchup in this.
Yeah, I mean, these are two teams generally like when they play each other, that they typically play higher scoring games too. So that stood out to me. And two teams that look like they're all business right now, and especially Red Deer, man. Like if you look at their schedule, and I'll get to this a little later, they've played like a lot of the upper echelon teams in the league, and they've come out well above 500. And I think they're a team to watch here moving forward. I know they didn't win the game, and they blew the 5-2 lead, but I'm liking what I'm seeing out of that team overall, and I wouldn't be shocked to see both of these teams repeating that type of performance down the stretch in what is again just such a tight and well played division in terms of the quality of lacrosse you're seeing out of the Central. Now let's move over to Sunday, where we had a few games. I want to start with the Chill and the Silver Tip. So the Chill coming off that draw in Red Deer would then go over to Crossfield and take on the Silver Tips. And unfortunately for the Chill, they fall short again in a close game. Now, this is a high scoring affair. Three silver tips, yes, three silver tips get a hat trick in this game. Graydon Clark, Tyler Montgomery, and Colt White all hat tricks as they combined for 9 of the Silver Tips 14. And then on the other side, Ethan Dumoulin, 4 goals, and Cash Bannister, 2 goals, 3 assists for the visiting side. And, I thought this was a game that if the Chill were sort of for real this year and like living up to their talent level, they would win. And I thought it was a bit of a litmus test, and they weren't quite able to do it. Granted, the Silver Tips are no pushover. This was a game that I thought it would be of utmost importance for them to win. Just especially given what happened the day prior, but they come out on the losing end again here. What do you have here as we wrap up the Central Division for the week?
Yeah, like you said, it was a bit of an uncharacteristic game for the Chill against the Rampage, and I do think, again, props to the Rampage for keeping that very tight and just stellar defense, just looking back at it. And this is more of the game we kind of expect from the Chill. Once again, they fall to the Silver Tips, and it seems like the Silver Tips have definitely had the Chill's number over at least the last couple seasons here. The Chill stay in it for most of the game. They kind of let it slip away a little bit at the start of the third. They ended up getting 3 more back right at the tail end of the third there. Obviously not enough to make any real significance here. But yeah, the Chill team is still impressive to me, even with, some losses piling up and all that. I don't know what gets them over the hump. And this is where my holdup is with the Calgary Chill, is what gets them over the hump of, losing these close games or, preventing a tie like against the Rampage, right? I don't know what that is. And I genuinely hope that the Chill can find it, because I think a round 1 Rampage Chill matchup followed by a round 2 matchup, whether that's against the Silver Tips or Mavericks or whoever it is there in the Central. I mean, man, this is just still such an interesting division to me. And now I know I'm getting a bit off track on this game. Just to wrap up the game, yeah, I'm impressed with the Chill even in the loss. I just hope that they can kind of get over this hump soon. But yeah, I think the Central Division, man, and we said it all last year, and it's just proving itself again. That Central Division is the most dangerous division, I swear, in almost all of Junior B lacrosse. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know if you agree with me there, but like, this is one of the hottest contested, most tightly played games of Junior B lacrosse I have ever really seen or watched ever.
yeah, no, you make a good point. I thought you were also pretty poignant in saying the Silver Tips seem to have the Chill's number. I don't. This is anecdotal, but I'm pretty sure that they won the season series last year.
Okay, I could definitely be
By
incorrect then.
what's that? Sorry.
I'm probably incorrect in my.
No, I think you're right that the Silver Tips have the Chill's number.
I'm gonna do a little bit of searching here, so.
But I mean, you talk about divisions in Junior B lacrosse. The only sort of rival to that would be maybe something in Ontario, as I sort of peruse the divisions right now in Ontario right now. I'm just looking. Um, Maybe the West, the Midwest in Ontario, where you have Orangeville 14-1, Elora 13-3, and Cambridge 11-4. You got 3 top end teams all in that division, and then your 2 bottom end teams are no slouches either. 6-9 Guelph and 6-9 Owen Sound. So that would be maybe the one division that you say when you have 3 teams that far above 500. You could probably make a strong argument for the Midwest and Ontario, but other than that, the Central and the RMLL is got to be has got to be right up there with it. So
And I've done just a little bit of digging here. The last time the Chill beat the Silvertips was game number 1 of the season in 2022, where the Chill beat the Tips 10-9. Since then, the Chill have tied the Silvertips once, but otherwise the Tips have won every single contest that they've played since 22.
yeah, so I mean, you got to think, and it's just amazing how certain teams match up with one another. It's fascinating when you really look into it. But you got to think that the Chill are probably hoping that they do get that matchup with Red Deer in the first round because they don't seem to match up all that well with the Mavericks or the Silvertips. Well, we'll see how it all pans out. One of those teams is going to miss the playoffs, and that just seems wild right now
It's
as
a
we sit
damn
here
shame. Damn shame.
June. Yeah, as we sit here June 5th, recording this podcast. Now, Keenan, for some reason, my notes on the Mavericks Outlaws game on Saturday night got deleted. So that's why I forgot about it as I'm doing my rundown here. So we'll go back to Saturday night for a second. And how could we not give this game some attention?
Oh, man.
The Outlaws were up 9-4 with 6.5 minutes to go, maybe 7.5 minutes to go. And the Mavericks rattle off 5 unanswered to tie the game at 9 before winning in overtime 10-9 on a goal where Buddy was just allowed to camp out in front of the net, stand there, catch the ball, and throw 3 fakes and score. And I mean, I thought Reed McLeod, who was awesome in this game, by the way, I mean, he made countless 2-on saves, breakaway saves. Like, I'm not kidding, Keenan. There were probably a dozen breakaway saves in this game and probably a half dozen more 2-on-1s, if not more than that. Like, I'm talking like 20 to 25 breakaways / odd man rush opportunities for the Mavericks. And Reed McLeod was probably put on the best goaltending performance I've seen this year. And that came in a 10-9 loss. That's saying something, I know, but no, he was terrific. I thought, the Outlaws got some really clutch goals. One, I remember shorthanded, Porter scored on a breakaway. The Mavericks in this game almost did themselves in. They put their backup in and left him in for about 3 or 4 goals. And I thought they were just trying to give Swan a reset, but they left their backup in for an extended period of time. And it wasn't even an extended, it was just maybe 8-minute block. And the Outlaws took a full advantage of it. Almost cost them the game, but the Mavericks, man, relentless. No matter how Keenan, no matter how ugly it is, no matter how unorthodox it is, this team just finds a way. They found a way in this game. They come all the way back, score 5 to tie it in the final 7.5, and then win in overtime. Sutherland had a big game. His shot was on from the outside. When he's on, man, he's a top 5 player in the league. And big win for them as they right now in terms of point percentage. I know the Silvertips have 7 wins and are at 14 points, while the Mavericks are 6 wins and a tie, 6-1-1. So they're at 13 points, but they have a couple games in hand. So points percentage wise, they're in first. Maybe not when you look at the page right now, they'll be listed as second, but really they're in first right now. Big win for them. Heartbreaking loss for the Outlaws. And on that overtime goal, Reed McLeod right after was just screaming at his teammates, obviously angry and upset and just dejected. And I totally get it. Like they just left him. Like they just left the Maverick guy just to let him stand there and camp out in front of the net. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. And then to blow the 9-4 lead, just it can't happen, right? I mean, I just pumped the Outlaws coaching staff tires earlier on, and they deservedly so. Good job by Casey and Forgrave and Cornfield and company, but can't lose that game. Like that's one that maybe could do some morale damage. I don't know, but yeah, big win for the Mavericks.
Yeah, it's I think disappointed is more the proper word to use here for me. In the Outlaws, I mean, you're leading a game 9-4 against arguably one of the top 3 teams in this league on the day we record this podcast. And unfortunately, they found a way to piss it away in the dying minutes of the game. Um, I don't know if there's even any proper kind of words personally to describe it. I know that, the Outlaws, I think, up until those dying final, 6-7 minutes of the game, I think they were playing the best lacrosse that they had played all year. And then they just, they took their foot off the gas way too early and just let up when they definitely shouldn't have. And it cost them in the end. And like you said, the Mavericks are they are finding ways to win games that they shouldn't even, and this sounds a little more harsh than I mean it, but the Mavericks are finding ways to win games that maybe they shouldn't have even been in the first place. Like, to see a Mavericks team as dominant as this one goes down 9-4 to the Outlaws, I mean, quite frankly, you shouldn't be in that place in the first place with the way you've been performing lately. But, man, what a team to still be able to find ways to win, even in those, games where you're trailing in the dying minutes, right? So, I mean, kudos to them. And I don't know if it was a defensive miscommunication or just somebody not being in the proper floor position that left May wide open for that overtime winner. Nonetheless, I mean, a disappointing loss for a game that the Outlaws could have at least gotten a point out of with a tie,
Yeah. I mean, to be fair to the Mavericks, they were. I mean, McLeod, like I said, was standing on his
Yeah.
head, so they were very much in this game. And that stretch where they had pulled Swan and left their backup in, that really hurt them. But full marks to them for having the resolve to come back in that game. It's just, if you're the Outlaws, like, that's almost more to do like with you blowing it than it is them coming back. There's just too many mental mistakes. They also had an extended power play where when they were up 9-4, or maybe it was 9-5 or 9-6 at the time, but like they had an extended power play and they just had no urgency and weren't moving the ball, and just made it easy for the Mavericks to kill off and stay in the game. And there were just moments in that game where you were just going like, man, like, it's right there for them. They just got to like finish it off, and they just never did. So big win for the Mavericks in a game that I'm sure even they didn't. You know what? You're on that bench at 9-4 with 8 minutes to go. You're not thinking you're winning that game. I don't care who you are. So huge win for them as a motorcycle goes by Keenan's window. Um, but
The downsides of living along a highway.
yeah, but yeah. So I mean, I kind of lost my train of thought. But yeah, it was an exciting game to say the least. The fans got their money's worth on Saturday.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
All right, so let's go back to Sunday. Couple games left to recap here. The Rampage, after getting that draw the day prior at home against the Chill, would go on the road to Edmonton to take on the Warriors. Don't have too much here. This was just kind of a better team putting their foot down and on the gas and just, driving straight ahead. The Red Deer Guns produced. Connors for the Warriors, the rookie, had the hat trick. So his increased production continues. There's one thing from this game as I briefly kind of rolled through it on CROW LAX on YouTube. There was a fight in the third period. Stashnik, and I think it was Graham for Red Deer.
Correct.
Right by the Red Deer bench. And did you see this, Keenan?
No, I'm just checking the box score here, and you're correct that it is Graham that it was for the Rampage.
So I'm watching it, and they get kind of tied up, and then they start going. And Graham kind of has Stashnik kind of bent over a little bit, and he's feeding him punches or whatever. And you're watching it, and the Red Deer bench is just jumping up and down and like slamming their sticks on the boards and stuff. And it just kind of it rubbed me the wrong way. Like it looked almost I hate when teams do this. Like it looks almost like barbaric in a way. It looks like you're feeding off of someone else's misery. Um, and somebody caught in a vulnerable position, and basically getting worked over a little bit. I didn't like it. I was watching. I was like, man, like there's just so many better ways to go about this. You're way up in the game. Um, if I was the Warriors, I would have taken exception to that. I just think it's not very classy. And Keenan, I just spent a long time talking about how highly I think of this Red Deer team. I have no issues. I think they're doing a good job there. I just didn't like what I saw there, and I just wanted to point that out. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, and feel free to share them. But I was watching that, and I was just thinking, there's just something disconcerting about this. Like, I don't. This is not impressive.
Yeah, no, just as you were saying there, I just pulled up the game on my phone here and I'm just watching that fight back over here and I totally understand what you're saying about all that. It's I don't really know what to say personally. I think I'm gonna choose to abstain from any comments here, just because I am only seeing this kind of for the second time now, first time since it was live. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm speaking part of, and I think it's important to understand. I'm speaking also from a former player's point of view, where like if you're
Yes.
on that Warrior bench, like that's just not acceptable. Like you can't be standing there going, "Oh yeah, that's cool." Like look at those guys. Like I think I don't know what was said on the Warrior bench. I don't know what happened after that. And that there obviously weren't more fights, and I don't know if the Warriors really have the guys to answer to that. But they are a young team. So I don't really know what came of that after it. Probably not much. But just internally, I don't think there's no way the Warriors could have been very happy with that. And it's too bad those two teams don't play again because maybe there'd be fireworks. I don't know, but I just thought I'd a little bit of a discussion point there and just some observations from afar. Now I don't know what led up to it. Maybe something was set. I don't know, but again, I just wanted to briefly touch on that. So the Rampage would win the game 16-8 going away, and they put up a crooked number on the road in Edmonton. And that takes us to our last recap of the week, and it was a tight one in Fort Saskatchewan. The Rebels would come back, much like the Mavericks, late, down by multiple goals, and win 9-8 in overtime. Um, Now, Keenan, I watched most of this game back, and the Rebels were so incredibly fortunate to win this game. Um, both the first thing I noticed in this game were both PKs were atrocious. Like both were just blasted. Like both power plays did whatever they wanted. There were 9 power play goals in this game. So you think about it, 9-8, 17 goals total, 9 power play goals. Um, the Rebels down 8-4 with 16-10 to go, come back, tie it, get a penalty shot late, get stopped, but then win in overtime on a Jackson Baker goal, who had a hat trick in this game. And seems like when the Rebels win, he's always getting 2 or 3. Um, but man, like the Crew, I thought the Crew deserved much better fate here. I thought Horn was getting beat from all kinds of bad angles in the third period. Just shots going through him, severe angles. Uh, Sika and Dickin had big games, 5 points each. As I said, Baker with 3 and 3, and Kohut with 2 goals and 3 assists for the Rebels. Uh, yeah, just a game that got away from the Crude. One that they had really in hand here, and then they get shut down in the third period, unable to add to their total because they were up 8-4, as I said, after the second, and then with 16-10 to go before the Rebels started to narrow it down. But yeah, just some demoralizing goals here against in the third period. And the Rebels do what they do, man. And they're kind of like, they have a little bit of Mavericks in them. They pull games out and do things that you're kind of going like, how'd they win that game? but hey, they won the game, so
That's
credit to
really
them.
that's really all that matters in the end is that you're finding ways
Yeah,
to win.
yeah.
And I think that I mentioned that the Mavericks are finding ways to win games that maybe they shouldn't be winning and stuff like that. I think the Crude are the opposite of the Mavericks. Is the Crude are somehow finding ways to lose games that they should be winning. And I think we've seen this a few times throughout the season, for the Crude. I mean, you look back on some of their games where they've lost, right? They lose 11-8 to the Warriors a few weeks ago, 13-4 loss to the Outlaws there. They tie the Mavericks 9-9. I think the Crude are just unique that way, that they're finding those ways to lose. And I don't know if it's finding those ways to lose in like a bad sense, or if it's just they're taking their foot off the gas too early, or just miscommunications and breakdowns, stuff like that. But the Crude, as we've said multiple times, they are so good on paper, and that's kind of,
At least offensively, yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
offensively, absolutely. And that's kind of where it ends, honestly, is that they're good on paper. Like, I was hoping for a lot more from the Crude this year, and I'm kind of let down a little bit on just the way that they're performing throughout the year, and just not performing to the full expectations that that as lacrosse connoisseurs, for a lack of a better term, that we expect, and I'm sure what the Crude coaching staff expects, right? So I great job by the Rebels to come back and win this game in a very Maverick-like fashion. Man, I would kill for a Rebels Mavericks final at the Larry Bishop. Like, seeing these two clubs go tit for tat like that, pound for pound, shot for shot, like it wouldn't get much better than a Rebels Mavericks game.
A 4-3 triple overtime thriller, buddy.
Oh
Right there.
man,
Mavericks Rebels.
man,
Bang,
you're
bang,
you're
bang.
making me
Yeah, that's it.
salivate just by the sound of that.
Yeah, and the JRC, have those trash cans going.
Oh, now we're
I
talking.
don't know. Yeah. I don't know if you were around for that, but like in 2019 when the Crude and Rebels played in the North Final, there
Yep.
were some guys up in the top that were sitting up top and just banging trash cans like they were so damn loud too.
Funny enough, that was, I
Every
believe, actually my first ever season in lacrosse, and I was actually working for the Crude organization at the time.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, the JRC. Whenever I had to move to the other side of the arena because man, this guy was just going to town. So now I just associate the JRC with guys banging trash cans. So we'll see if those return for the provincials, but
Once we hit
they'd be
July, it
fired
will
up.
happen.
Yeah, they'd be fired up for Rebels' opportunity to go to a Founders Cup. And I can't imagine the atmosphere if they do get into the final. In that type of setting. So, credit to them though. They obviously did not play very well this weekend, and they found ways to win the games. So, you know, we'll see. They're a team to watch. Like they got to add, and I've said this to people. They have to add. They have to add about 3 or 4 players to be to get to where they need to be a real contender, and we'll see what they do there. I think they're being aggressive and they're trying all types of avenues to get better personnel. We'll see what happens.
And
But
just to mention, just back to Rebels Mavericks for a second, just looking at the Rebels schedule, they actually they do end up playing each other on Saturday, June 14th. So in week 8, they actually play each other. So that's gonna be a barn burner.
yeah, and for the sake of the best North final possible, and obviously that team in the North final is going to get to the Larry Bishop at the provincials. Um, in an ideal world, you would want Rebels Crude because the Crude have the ammunition, as you saw in this game, to push them. Now, this isn't the Rebels playing all that well, but like the Crude do have the players, at least on offense, to push them. And they
Yes.
have the offense on paper to, when it shows up, to be a problem for teams at the provincials. Will they get there? We'll see. But if you're talking about who has the best chance to cause problems in that division, it's the CROW. So
100%.
we'll see how things develop. But that is our week 6 recap. Now, I wanted to touch on one other thing here before we get to the wrap here. And that is, again, like the schedule. I want to tell people, like, I guess here's my starting point. The WLA, for example, has a model where each team has a home night. So, like, New West is like Tuesday, or that's Junior A is Tuesday, but like New West is Thursday, Langley is Wednesday, Coquitlam is Saturday, Victoria is Friday, and so on, right? Every team has their own home night, so there's games staggered. There's one game a night. The odd day you might have 2 games in one day, but that's very rare. Like Maple Ridge is Sunday night. And you have games in the evening. You don't have all these like afternoon games, and then these are teams that are traveling from the island and back too. Like, so these aren't necessarily even local games. And it creates such a better scheduling dynamic. You can actually pay attention to more than one game. You don't have 4 games going on at the same time. Like, why are we playing so many Sunday afternoon games, especially in division? Like, why are the Rebels and Crude playing at 2 o'clock on Sunday? Like, there's only a finite amount of games. We're wasting these game times or game slots in times where we can't get, near enough eyes on them and near enough attention. Like, the crowds are struggling as is. Putting and moving them, and instead of having it on a Thursday night or a Friday night, we're putting it on Sunday afternoon. People aren't going to the game. So there's just I just think there's so many better ways to do this. And again, I thought the schedule might change and be better this year. It just hasn't been. So I don't know how you feel about that, Keenan, but go ahead.
I will say the only thing I really have to add to this is I won't reveal my sources, but I have heard from somebody within, the within a team in the league here that is actually pushing for that same kind of scheduling and making a really aggressive approach to it to try and get the league to maybe even consider it. So I won't reveal my sources on that, but I think it would be beneficial for the health of lacrosse and having a steady flow of games all week long. It ups the visibility, it ups the maybe the mentality and stuff like that of these guys, where it's like, hey, we're playing this evening, and it's always on that same kind of schedule, right? So like, I think that would be honestly great for this league.
Whoever's bringing that forward is very smart. And
I'll
I
tell
give
you
you a lot of
after. I'll
credit.
tell you once we wrap.
Yeah, I know. I was asking. I was about to ask that. I was gonna wait till after, but yeah, it's coming, so you can get that answer ready for me. But no, whoever that is, I have a lot of respect for that. So good job by you. All right, Keenan. So with that, let's get to boss of the week and our power ranking, and let's start with boss of the week here. And it is none other than Reed McLeod. Even in the loss, breakaway after breakaway, countless 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, guys left all alone on his doorstep, turning guys away all over the place. Reed McLeod, the Outlaws goaltender, is your boss of the week, as him and the Outlaws go down 10-9, but he was stellar in the cage in that game. Now let's go to our power rankings. And what do you want me to go first here, Keenan?
Yeah, give her. Absolutely give her. I've got
All
mine.
right.
I'm curious yours.
All right. So I'll start at 5, and I'll work the way up, or work our way up to 1 here. So at 5, I've got the Rocky View Silvertips. They're playing at a much higher level than I think most people expected. They lost some really key players, including Norris and McDonough, from last year's provincial host team. They're playing in the league's toughest division, and they're still collecting wins. Every time a game's close, they somehow win. They've got that clutch factor to them, and they're full marks so far this year. So they're at number 5. Number 4, I've got the Queen City Kings, 8-1. They have played a favorable schedule. you touched on this earlier, tons of home games so far. They only have 2 or 3 remaining. They're going to spend a lot of time on the road and play some better teams here. So they have a chance to move up here, but for now they're going to be at 4, despite the 8-1 record. Now at 3, I've got the Red Deer Rampage, 5-3-1. All 3 losses to teams in these power rankings, and they've played probably the league's toughest schedule to date. Getting Dowswell back is huge. Remember, he was up with the minors for an extended period of time. Him coming back down gives them one of the league's best back out the front gate, and they've got a few high-end offensive players, and they play disciplined lacrosse for the most part, and put themselves in a position to succeed. At number 2, I've got the Calgary Shamrocks. That offense has really started to click. I wasn't sure about this team at the start of the year, but they seem to have found themselves. They had a bit of a get-right weekend in Saskatchewan, bunch of goals, and they're back to their identity of filling the net. Shamrocks at number 2 at 8-2. And at number 1, I've got the Mountain View Mavericks, Alberta rep at the Founders last year. Until they're dethroned or until they hit a slide here, I've got to have them at 1. Really, mostly because nobody else is taking it from them. Again, they find ways to win, no matter how ugly or improbable it is, and they're always applying pressure to their opponents. Mountain View Mavericks are your number 1 team in the RMLL circuit as of June 5th. Keenan, what do you got?
All right, well, our top 5 definitely is a little bit different from one another. Number 1 is, pretty obvious, but we'll get there. Starting down at my number 5, I've got the Okotoks Marauders sitting there. Maybe this is a bit unexpected to put the Marauders here, but they've been playing pretty hot as of late. I mean, they have 2 of the 3 wins against the SWAT. Sure, okay, they have a loss there. They did have a couple losses against strong Shamrocks and Silvertips teams, staying pretty close in against the Tips. But the Marauders, I think, are proving that they've kind of been a force. And sure, maybe some teams have had their number over the years, as we've discussed in previous podcasts this year. But the Marauders are making a fairly strong case for why they should be or have that home floor advantage going into round 1 of the playoffs as we enter the back half of the season. Up at number 4, I have the Shamrocks down here at number 4. So the simple reason that I have the Shamrocks here is, you mentioned we were kind of unsure about them at the start of the year, and I fully agree with that. That reset weekend against the SWAT definitely helped. Taking a loss to the Mounties early in the season maybe was a bit of a hit to the Shamrocks, and the 12-7 loss to the CROW also a bit of a hit there. Maybe not as much as maybe we first anticipated. So, I think the Shamrocks are proving again why they've been top of the South for so long, as they continue to find ways to win. I have them at 4 for that reason. Number 3, I have the Regina Queen City Kings. Dominant this year, 8-1-0 to start the year. Their only loss coming against the Mounties here this past weekend. So, just on the dominant case of the of the Kings, not the Rockies. My goodness, I just saw Rockies on my screen for a second. In just the dominant case of the Kings, having one loss to the Mounties, sure, that's not too bad. And, it was a fairly close game. I mean, the Mounties double you up, but you're only losing by 4. And the other 2 games, you put up, 28 goals? Still very impressive. So the Kings' domination continues, and that gets them at number 3. At number 2, I've got the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels. I mean, once again, losing those 3 games to the Blizz in that 3-game set out in Winnipeg definitely hurt, and I think they needed these 2 wins over this last weekend, the Warriors and the CROW, to kind of, get themselves back into the groove of playing. I mean, they've only played 9 games this year, so, I say only 9 games. That's basically half of the year. But at the start of the year, it was all dominant wins outside, and then they go to Winnipeg and get, for lack of a better term, basically just annihilated, right? So they come back with 2 big wins this weekend, and we'll see how they progress as the season moves on. That gets them in number 2 as they continue to top the North. And at number 1, undeniably, is the Mavericks Lacrosse Club, finding ways to win when they maybe shouldn't, defending that home floor like it's their, last line of defense kind of thing. And it's just impressive what Trey Christensen and the Mavericks organization have been able to do last year and this year. And as the reigning defending Alberta champs, I mean, they're making a strong case to head back to the Founders again, and this time right in their own backyard.
Yeah, no, pretty good, Keenan. I will say though, you only have one Central team in your rankings there. I don't know, man.
It was tough. I'll be honest. Marauders was tough to put in there because I had Marauders and Silvertips kind of neck and neck there. But I did edge out and throw the Marauders in there just as we sit currently going into week 7.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how those may change over the next few weeks, and there will be some change here, no doubt. I guess honorable mention for me would be the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels, who are atop the North. They're just outside my top 5 right now, but with a couple of game, if I see a couple games from them where they look a little like they're back with it, they'll move in. But for right now, they'll be honorable mention. All right, so that just about does it, Keenan. I will say you mentioned Rockies. It's a tough time to be a Rocky, man. Between the Lethbridge Rockies and the Colorado Rockies, man. Like,
if your name is Rockies, you're not doing good right now.
Yeah, the Colorado Rockies are something like 9-50 or something right now. So
I think they improved to 11-50 this weekend against whoever they were playing,
true.
and
I
think it was the Marlins or something, and that's just embarrassing for the Marlins. So
they pretty much increased their win total by 25% over the weekend.
Practically.
So in baseball, that's saying something, man. Like, there's a big enough sample size where you increase your win total by 25%. 60 games into the season, man, that's pretty impressive.
Ain't that the truth?
Math on that. Just the math on that. But we're getting off track here. But yeah, tough time to be called the Rockies. But anyways, So with that, let's set everybody up for week 7. What's on the docket here on CROW LAX?
So week 7, we just had actually our first broadcast of the week just the other night on Wednesday as the junior ladies Titans would take on the senior St. Albert Drillers. That game would end with the Titans taking the victory in St. Albert. Still another 10 games to come this weekend, starting with, well, you're going to be hearing this Friday morning, so coming up tonight, the CROW make their way out to Beaumont as they're going to take on the Rebels. The Rebels. Am I having a stroke?
No, you just love the Rebels, man. You professed your love for the Rebels a little earlier, and so you just have them on your mind.
Apparently, the CROW traveled to Beaumont to take on the Outlaws. That game at 7:30 tonight, if you're listening the day this comes out. On Saturday, it's going to be 4 games on the network, starting with game in Beaumont again, as the Outlaws will take on the Rebels this time at 3:30 p.m., followed by a 6:30 p.m. matchup for the Senior Outlaws against the Edmonton Miners. 7 p.m., the Rocky View Knights travel up the QE2 to Fort Saskatchewan to take on the Rebels. That game at 7 p.m. And on Saturday, Winnipeg making their trip out west here, as the Blizz are going to take on the Silvertips. That game, 8 p.m. on Saturday. 5 games on the slate for Sunday. Starting at 1 p.m., the Warriors and Silvertips. That game goes down again 1 p.m. on Sunday. Hour later, 2 p.m., the Rampage head the opposite way of the Warriors up the QE2 as they take on the Rebels at 2 p.m. Also at 2 p.m., the Rocky View Knights taking on the Senior Outlaws as they play their second of 2 games on the weekend. 2:30 p.m. It's going to be our first Tier 2 matchup of about, I don't know, 3-4 weeks here on the network, as the Tier 2 CROW take on the Sherwood Park Titans. That game again, 2:30 p.m. on Sunday. And rounding out your week of broadcasts on CROW, the Edmonton Miners taking on the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels, 5 p.m. on Sunday.
Keenan, that's a good, you know what? That's a good point that you just made, or the topic you just brought up. It's been forever since a Tier 2 game was being broadcast because it's the one team, right, with the Titans, and they
Yes.
hadn't had a home game. Well, like, that's all over the place. It's another issue. Like, the Miners junior A team, it'll be 5 weeks from when they've played their last home game to when they play their next home game, which is still a week away from tomorrow or from Saturday. So think about that. The season is short as it is, and then you're going 5 weeks without a home game. Like, man, it's bizarre. I don't know, man. There's really no other way to put it, but
Bizarre is a good word to use there.
yeah. So that's what that just came to my mind there when you said that there's finally a Tier 2 broadcast coming up, because there's these huge gaps in the schedule too.
They're very interesting. I know I had a couple messages actually on the CROW social media accounts, which you can follow us at CROW LAX TV on Instagram and X, with a couple people asking about if we're still even covering the Tier 2 Titans. Well, yes, we are, just they had not played a home game in about 4 weeks, so just an interesting scenario there. So, well, as we wrap up this week's Junior Beast podcast, where can they find you?
Everybody can reach me at MJ_9 on Twitter /X and M.Joma on Instagram. DMs are always open. Feel free to hand over and slide over any comments, questions, or opinions. I always love to talk lacrosse. Get at me. And you can always check out the podcast, of course. I post it there on Instagram, on stories, and on my Facebook feed as well. So if you're looking where to find the podcast and you're not on, you're not directly finding it on YouTube, you can always find it there as well.
Absolutely. And be sure to like, subscribe, comment, hit that notification bell, be notified every time we go live all season long. Junior B Tier 1, Junior B Tier 2, Senior B, Alberta Major Female. Follow us on Instagram and X at CROW LAX TV. For my broadcast partner, well, I guess podcast partner, more than broadcast partner for this. For my podcast partner, Mohammed, my name is Keenan. Thank you so much for tuning into the Junior Beast, and we'll see you next week.